Hello everyone and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival. The DIF is the online festival of ideas curated by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that asks the question, what if we could redesign everything? My name is Leo and welcome to this session, Circular 4.0 and the role of data to enable remanufacturing. In this session, Dr. Mariella Moreno, an academic fellow at Cranfield University whose research focuses on the interpretation and analysis of consumer data to foster innovation, is joined by Windo Hutabarat, a research associate in digitalization of manufacturing processes at the University of Sheffield. These guys are joining from Cranfield today to discuss and answer your questions around how data captured through sensors could help to diagnose the integrity of components to enhance their remanufacturing process. And before I hand things over to Windo and Mariella over in Cranfield, a reminder to you all watching at thinkdif.co, please do post all of your thoughts, comments and questions in the chat box just below the window in which this is streaming from on the session page. And Windo and Mariella will try their utmost to answer your questions. So without any further ado, Mariella, Windo, it's over to you.
Hi, Leo. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last session here at Cranfield on Circle 4.0, where Windo and I are going to talk about a project that has been sponsored by the Network Plus, Connected Everything, digital economy in the new digital age. So, as Leo said, I am located here at Cranfield, but we are collaborating with Windo and Professor Ash Tiwari at Sheffield University. And also this project is led by Dr. Fiona Charnley. So we could start, please, next slide. So basically, this project is looking into how we could use data to enable remanufacturing. And basically now every day through the use of digital technology, we share our personal data, and more that we have devices that are connected to the internet. And actually now we are starting to see how these devices connect to each other. So look to this example, which is a proof of concept from an Italian supermarket, which is called COP. And this was presented last January on a fair in New York City, which basically is looking to the new concept of the supermarket of the future, in where customers could actually get to the shelf and select a product, see where the product is from, look into the nutritional information, also dietary information regarding if you are allergic to something or if you are vegetarian, if it's suitable for you to eat. You could see also from that screen that things like where the product comes from, so place of origin, and all this information you could actually is connected to an application from your mobile phone. So actually it is telling the supermarket is collecting information from their customers, but also through their mobile phone customers can interact with these screens. And this of course gives a lot of information about customer preference to the supermarket. But what is very interesting about this concept as well is that through sensors in the shelf, basically will inform the supermarket when a product needs a replacement, when it needs to have more stock about certain product, and this helps the relationship also not from the supermarket to their supply chain in terms of when they can actually need more products. And of course it's about knowing the demand and knowing the consumer preferences. So it's clearly that more and more we are going to see this type of concepts into the market, but actually we have a big challenge. So please, the next slide. So what is the challenge? The challenge is that if we are producing more and more technology, actually we could, in this linear system, actually we we are contributing to resource depletion, and we are contributing to pollution and also social problems. So as you could have been here for the last 3 weeks, the circular economy is one of the propositions that actually it could create value, and could create value not just for the user, but also for companies, for retailers, for all sorts of organizations. So the idea is how we could actually merge these two ideas of circular economy and digital economy to create a better future. Please, next slide. So as I was saying, there's a huge opportunity in order to create intelligent assets. And as probably you have heard from these last 3 weeks, the circular economy looks into two perspectives. One is the technological perspective, and the other one is the biological perspective. But for this specific project, we're really focusing on the technology side of things. And a few years ago, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation released a very inspiring report on intelligent assets and how intelligent assets actually could help enable the digital, the circular economy. And this actually was kind of our inspiration to write this project and to conduct this area of research. So what we are really looking into is looking into how these intelligent assets could help in the maintenance, reuse, remanufacture, and recycle. But for this particular feasibility study, we are focusing on the remanufacturing side, and is really looking into how intelligent assets could help us to create knowledge, information, and also through the data acquisition and sensing of the data, through collecting data from components, and assess and in terms of longevity, lifespan, and also patterns of use of that particular component, and how this knowledge and information could actually help us to implement remanufacturing strategies. Please, next slide. So in our initial research, we classified the different circular economy strategies according to the different data flows, and we kind of put a limitation on the data flows that we could get from product to product, product user product, and product manufacturer product, and also user manufacturer user. We know, and it's clear, that these data flows could come from different actors, also including the supply chain. But for a matter of simplicity and to narrow the scope a bit of our research, we focus on these 4 data flows. And when we call the big M, is really data coming from the manufacturer, but also their value chain. So looking into these data flows, then we look into the circular strategies that could happen in the technical cycle. So we divided this in 3 main strategies, which are end of current life, product life extension, and increasing utilization. And then through that, we kind of divided into further subcategories. So for end of current life is really cascading and recycling. For product life extension, we have 3 subcategories, which are refurbish, remanufacture, reuse, redistribute, and maintenance. And for the last categories, increasing utilization, we have a subcategory of product as a service and sharing platforms. So, and then you could see the different kind of strategies that could be implemented through the data flows and the circular strategy. So for purpose of this research, as I said, we're focusing on refurbish and remanufacture. So really the data flows and strategies that we are looking at is looking into how users and manufacturers could actually share upgrades on needs of how to maintain that component in a longer use. And then from product to user to product, user, product, we're looking into how to identify upgrade options. So basically it's about upcycling. So if you have, for example, a motor in a car, how actually we could enhance that motor to expand their lifetime, but also be able to upgrade in the remanufacturing process. And then also product BGM to product is about sharing product integrity. So this is more about how the data about temperature, vibration, more of the physical elements of that component could actually help to assess the integrity of that component or that product. And then identify user preference, user BGM to user. So it's really looking into patterns of use of how people, for example, we take a car and components of a car. It's really important to know how people drive to identify the impact it has in the different components of a car. And this perfect moment now to pass to Window, because actually we are looking into the automotive sector as a case study. So Window will explain a little bit more about that now.
Thank you very much, Marielle. Can you move to the next slide, please? Right. Let me give you a few seconds to take in the site. And once you have gotten over the shock of seeing David Hasselhoff, I think I would like to mention that we have been thinking about smart cars for quite some time now. I think this comes from the early 80s. But it is now increasingly quite prevalent. We see cars getting smarter all the time. The cars that I took to drive from Sheffield to here was so smart that it can sense when I'm drifting off the lane and then correct accordingly. And it's only getting more smarter. Yeah, that's the trend that we are seeing. What we are also seeing is that the smart cars generate a lot of information, and all of those information and data can be used to lower uncertainty about what is actually happening to the car components. This is going into where we are interested in, which is when we know more about a car and its use, then the hypothesis is that we will be able to lower our uncertainty about what the integrity of the components in the car look like once the car goes in for its second life. Could you move to the next slide, please? These are some evidence that connected cars are only about to get more prevalent. As you can see, the numbers are steadily rising, and the figure that is often cited is that by 2021 there will be nearly 100 million cars being shipped around the world. And the customers are responding accordingly. In a study done by Accenture, people are really responding to the availability of more data emanating from the car, and they are able to articulate their what is it that they want from the newer sources of data. This particular graph focuses on the convenience services in the car, and one of those, which I would like to point out, is the ability of smart cars to provide vehicle health reports. And there is quite a large number that are very likely to start using that kind of feature where it become available. Next slide, please. And this is our take on how this can help in circular economy. Let us say that we have automotive components, and just to help our thinking, let us focus on batteries. Of course, batteries are now becoming even more important with all the electric cars coming online in the world. At the moment, batteries are already generating data, but mostly through the ECU or the computer that is already installed in the car. And there are currently quite a lot of cheap sensors that we can envision being added onto the battery and generating new sources of data, such as vibration, current rate, current extraction rate, temperature, which I'm told is one of the big problem in electronic components. And with the availability of connected cars, we can quite easily imagine a future where all of these components, all of these critical components, starts sending data to the cloud. And the cloud also provides the ability to process the data, even perhaps in real time. And we think that will enable us to come up with the ability to create suggestions, help people make decisions, something that we like to call as circular intelligence, whereby every stakeholder in the circular economy system, in this particular example, gets the information that they need to make the correct kind of decision within their realm of responsibility. And this links directly to what to the table that Mariale shown before, which is all the different possibilities that are present in each column. I think I cannot see what they are saying, but just as an example, on the right side, the user big M user connectivity will enable manufacturers to identify user preferences and generate options that will help circular economy according to their perception of what the user likes. This is linking to what I shown earlier about user preferences from connected cars, and that applies across to every element in the manufacturer supply chain, which will help us in making decisions that will help optimal life extension strategy. Next slide, please. But why do we need this? Why is uncertainty reduction important? Let me take you through some of the challenges in remanufacturing that is quite well known in literature. In one side, remanufacturing can lower cost because you have, as a manufacturer, you have ability of return parts at quite little, not much cost. And the fact that you do not have to dispose of these parts means that you save in disposal expenses, which is set to become quite a larger share of the costs of manufacturing parts. So those are two examples of factors that can lower cost. But on the other hand, there are also elements that can increase cost. First of all, you have to consider the cost of disassembly and the sorting of parts. This is not trivial, and in fact, I am aware of quite a big strand of research in the UK looking at disassembly and the science of disassembly. And then it's not economical to do remanufacturing for only single parts, so you have to hold these return parts so that they form a large enough batch size so that it's economically viable to start paying people to remanufacture them. So you have to pay for the inventory, and you have to deal with the smaller batch sizes, which will be less economical. Then you have to deal with alternative manufacturing processes, because manufacturers usually cannot use the primary plants to remanufacture the parts. And then finally, sometimes when you use the manufactured product, you have to sell them at a bit of a discount. So all of this creates challenges for manufacturers. And if we have high uncertainty in all inputs for this, then it will just make people paralyzed. I think it will be very difficult for manufacturers to even start thinking about seriously tackling or using remanufacturing strategies. And what we want to do is to create and make methods that enable all stakeholders to generate and use in-use data, first of all, to reduce uncertainties and help in making manufacturing decisions. Next slide, please. Now, when we have all of those elements combined, then we can start thinking about alternative business models. And when we see there is a forecast by Gartner that 70% of all auto-related customer interactions will be digital. And we have already seen numerous examples of digital technologies creating new business models. Of course, Uber type businesses came as an example, and there are also car share technologies that we see. And then there is opportunity to create new business models that make greater use of this data and possibly creating new circular economy business models which are centered around circular economies. Just a simple example that I got from existing literature, that just requesting real-time services or that such as booking a maintenance appointment, this can lead to new digital business models. Next slide, please. As part of our research, we pose such questions using simulations. We are considering using system dynamics, which is the picture that you are seeing there, where we treat the circular economy system, the interactions between all stakeholders, as interactions between parameters that change in time. Now, because we know the connections between the stakeholders, we can capture them within the system dynamics model and see what is the impact of certain changes. So, for example, if you know more about the integrity of the parts that are coming into your remanufacturing plant, would that make it easier for you to generate working schedules for your workers? The hypothesis is yes, that it would certainly help, but we would like to quantify that using simulation. There are also other types of simulation that can help drill down and see what are the impacts of behavior changes at the user level, or even at dealership level, or perhaps at the management level in the manufacturing companies. That kind of simulation is what we will be looking at in this study. And I think that is the...
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so thank you very much. And I think we have a question. This question is from Lisa. So the question is, are there many more examples already out of companies using data to enable remanufacturing? And second part of the question, how are large companies adapting to these new models of production and technologies? So yes, there are examples, and I think one of the most known ones, which it's actually a case study from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, is Renault. So they have a remanufacturing plant in France. I think it's Roissy, the town. And actually, they use a lot of data to inform the decision making on remanufacturing for certain components of their cars. What I think is kind of the difference between what Renault is already doing to what we are doing is that actually, as I said, it's just really particular components that can be remanufactured and that Renault is looking at. And what we want to do is actually increase that that rate of components, and also looking not just into traditional vehicles. We know that there is already an increase of electrical vehicles, and that by 2050, actually, in most European countries, petrol and diesel cars will be banned. And there is a shift now to new technologies, especially in the EV market. So components in electrical vehicles actually are kind of a unique case, and we are actually focusing more on that market for our feasibility study, and actually trying to take a broad of components that actually could go to a remanufacturing process. And the second part of the question is, how are large car companies adapting to these new models of production and technologies? So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Window.
Actually, I do not have a good visibility of large car companies. I think what I would like to comment here is that we are actually collaborating with smaller car companies, because this smaller car companies are seeing the trend that what is happening at the moment. One particular car company that we are closely collaborating with is actually very closely aligned to what we have proposed before, that with the availability of data and nature of circular economy, they can create more business out of being more circular, if that makes sense. So the better they are at creating more efficient, more remanufacturable cars, the better they make, the more money they make. And I think I can say this, that they are focusing more on the product surface system side of the circular economy equation at the moment. But the remanufacturing aspect will certainly be very useful, particularly for their suppliers, given that this is quite an emerging new technology, the electric car business.
And I mean, like for large companies, I could put the example of Michelin, which is a tire manufacturer, which actually they started to see a huge opportunity to have tires as a service, especially for fleet vehicles. So large fleet companies for freight and things like that. So now you could see that these freight companies, actually, they don't buy the tires from Michelin, they actually lease them from them. Again, they are not focusing just on remanufacturing, but as Windows said, because it's a product service system, if you have a system that you lease your tires, you have control of that asset. So by having control of that asset, that creates value because the asset belongs to the company, and also gives other value to the client, which is that they don't have to worry about the maintenance, or even if a tire, basically because of the high intensive use that trucks and lorries have, tires can end their life in very rapid way. So the company doesn't have to worry about investing in buying new tires for the lorries. They outsource everything to the manufacturer. So it's like a very convenient contract. But because of that contract and knowing the assets, then Michelin could go and see also remanufacturing models to see if it's possible to remanufacture a tire. And that's kind of the big questions, but opening to opportunities as well. So you can see, and nowadays most of our cars, any brand, will have sensors and technology embedded into it, and that's how actually you can get to know if your tires are low or you need to go to the service, because everything is monitored by having sensors in the car. However, the opportunity is looking into how this information could actually help to enable new business models within the automotive sector. So I think, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Lisa. And I don't know if there is any other questions from the audience.
It looks like Lisa's the only one that's popped a question at the moment. But I do have a question of her own. So you say that Window mentioned that by 2020 that 70% of auto-related consumer interactions will be digital. I'm keen to know what kind of increase that is from the current level. It seems like there's a lot of technologies already in place, as Mariela just mentioned, that we have sensors that let us know what the tire pressures, the oil temperatures and the engine temperatures. How much of an increase is that going forward? Are we going to see a sharp rise in the amount of technologies that enable us to retrieve some data about the information on the car?
Okay. Well, I left my crystal ball, but I think anecdotally we have already seen the great increase in the capability of cars to anticipate us as a driver, and I feel that that is quite a high technical challenge, and it is very good. It's related to safety, and that quite rightly has been the priority for auto manufacturers in designing digital interactions with the drivers. But I think, judging from the literature that I've read, it would be quite safe to assume that there's going to be a sharp rise, especially with newer cars and the increased use of electric cars, because the nature of the wear and tear in electric car components, I think, is quite different from the more mechanical cars. And we are dealing with a big supply chain. I am postulating here. We are dealing with a big supply chain that are very, very accustomed to dealing with combustion engine cars. I think it would be, if we were not to use the digital technology to help make this transition, then it would be a great shame. So I think it's only going to start to increase. I think that's my postulate. Yeah.
And I think what the challenge is that what is happening at the moment is that you have all this data coming from different sources. So you have data coming from the car, you have data coming from our mobile phones every time we put a sat nav. We have, and using like applications like Waze or Google Maps. There is data coming from traffic control, so that's like data coming from the city. But what happens is that, yeah, nobody communicates between each other. So at the moment, there is no mechanism that actually collects all this data in a way that informs better value for not just for the car manufacturer or the user or the providers of infrastructure, but also for our own sake and well-being. So we know there is an increase of pollution. You just see City of London, which last year had this year in January, it was rated one of the most polluted cities. You had like congestion hasn't been alleviated. So it's all these key problems that are there. But actually, I mean, I am a big advocate that if we actually communicate with each other as stakeholders and find a way of finding a mechanism that we could integrate this data, and actually not just integrating the data, but also looking into how we analyze the data to create meaningful changes. So for me, it's and just like a single good example that happened to my commute in Cranfield last Wednesday was that I was in the motorway and M1 closed, and I live in London. I had to drive every day to Cranfield. M1 closed, like what I'm going to do now. And because there is a bit of communication between the traffic controllers and Google Maps, I could find my way to Cranfield and avoid the closure of the M1. So there is already seen some examples that they started to communicate between all the stakeholders, but I think much more has to be done.
Right. Cool. So you mentioned that integrating data and the technological advancements and the rise in digital kind of brought up something that actually cropped up in a DIF session last year. I can't remember what exactly the session was, but they mentioned that cars are actually going to be transformed into more, and they're going to be resembling more smartphones rather than vehicles. So it looks like integrating data into the car components, the technological advancements that are coming, and adapting working with small businesses, car businesses to adopt remanufacturing into their business models is kind of going to lead us into a stage where the automotive industry are producing cars that are basically smartphones, remanufacturable smartphones that share data, as Mariella you just said, that is relaying and receiving information from various sources, not just from its components, but from elsewhere, from traffic, from the car manufacturers, from people nearby that need in a decentralized manner that need components being fixed, and if you need components that need fixing. So I think it's really interesting to see that remanufacturing is coming into the world of the automotive industry, and that coupled up with the technology that's being used, the sharing of data in the automotive industry is really quite fascinating. And Windo, you mentioned earlier that this was all part of research that you've been doing at Sheffield University, at the University of Sheffield rather. And I was wondering I'm not sure if you mentioned what the research was actually called and who you've been working with. Mistake me if I may be mistaken.
Yes. Our team in University of Sheffield, we work on a topic called manufacturing informatics. So the idea is, in manufacturing, we have a lot of processes, and the trouble is that a lot of those processes are observed and implemented only by humans and experts. And we see that manufacturers on the shop floor do not get the same kind of computational help as people say in the design office. For instance, you have quite a mature system of computer-aided design, but is there some to help designers? But there is not much out there that help people on the shop floor, manufacturing people, in managing the processes. So our focus is on how do we generate data from the shop floor, which is how to digitize the shop floor, and not only shop floor, but the bigger manufacturing process. So we include supply chain interactions, the user to product interactions in there as well. So how do we digitize that? And then how do we make use of that? And that is also a big thing. We will consider using machine learning. We will consider using simulations. But ultimately, it's all about helping people making decisions and helping people make better use of the assets that they have around them. This includes all the way up from the individual worker to the making things, to the users that actually use the things, and the manufacturing managers that make that. And this visibility study that we do here is making use of the concepts that are starting to come into play from Industry 4.0. I don't know how well Industry 4.0 have been discussed in the past 3 weeks, but it's the coming thing in manufacturing, and it's just natural that we will try to incorporate circular economy into the Industry 4.0 concepts. And this is something that has been greatly pushed forward by the publication of the report from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which was truly quite inspiring. Yeah.
And also a latest report from the government.
Yes.
Which is
Made Smarter.
Made Smarter, yeah.
Yes. That was a recently released report which argues very strongly and very well about the importance of this digital future for manufacturing.
Great. Well, that's some reading for the viewers if they haven't read that already. I'm cautious of the time. I think we're probably just coming to the end now. But I was wondering if you had any final thoughts or key points that you think anybody watching this or anybody interested in the role of data in enabling circular business models like remanufacturing. What can they do? What's the key learning from this today, do you think?
Okay, can I start and then you close off?
Yeah, for sure.
So from the more technical perspective, I think Marielle will be able to provide the bigger picture view. It's that, well, it's almost quite intuitively obvious that we will be generating more data and we will be consuming more data. And as recent developments suggest that we will have more pressure in the resources that is available to us. So on one hand, we will have more data and we will have less resources to play with. And it seems to me that it's eminently sensible to try to make use of data and to help us deal with the counterbalance the effect of that. And the second is that, so that's my first kind of a big picture. The second is that as the table that Marielle shows, our research ambition is not only limited to remanufacturing. We will be looking at a lot of other ways to promote circular economy, product service systems, for example, reuse of cars. One thing that I like to imagine is that in the future I can have a self-driving car that can take me to work, and then once I get in and I can tell the car, okay, you go and make yourself useful and Uber, be autonomous Uber, and then I sit in the office and then work, and then the car is making money for me. Just a crazy thought. So there are interesting propositions out there, and I think I really like what you said earlier about cars becoming more like smartphones. We see, well, the smartphone business is it's very difficult to believe that it's only 10 years old. But we see it becoming, it's such a big part of our lives now, and people are making apps very, very creatively. Would there be something similar for cars in the future? I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. And smartphones incorporate some, you can get on contract, you have a leasing service. If something's broken, you send it away, you get the component fast, and then you get it sent back good as new. And that would be something that, seeing that in the car industry, yes, in a more, on a larger scale would be really rather interesting to see. So thanks, Window, for that insight. And Mariella, if you had something to add in terms of the bigger picture, as Window mentioned.
So for me, the bigger picture is that to actually have a transformation that is beneficial for everyone, and actually we drive towards not just a circular economy, but also to a kind of, yeah, more better world where we could enhance our well-being. I think we need to really look at, yeah, how we use data in a smarter way, and actually not just having all these data sets and being eager to share data and collect data, but what we do with it is the important thing. So the big data can really tell us the what, it can tell us the statistics, but if we don't really ask the important questions, which is how and why, that transition will not happen. So that's my final thought.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for that really insightful discussion. It's a really fascinating topic to get into, and you've provided a more technical and more broader picture in terms of circular economy perspectives, which is fantastic. So thank you, Window and Mariella, for taking the time today to join us at the DIF. It's been great.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you very much, Leo.
Right, and thank you to the audience as well. We got a couple of questions in there, but if you still have questions coming through, please do pop them on the session page, and I will ask Mariella and Window politely to, if they see any questions on there, to respond while it's available, while this recording of this session is available for the next 4 weeks or so. And so far, so we may be coming to the end of this session, and we may also be coming to the end of the Disruptive Innovation Festival 2017. It's been a long 3 weeks, but we've had over 200 sessions, be it pre-recorded videos or Google Hangout discussions. But we still have we still have a day's worth of sessions here at the DIF, and later today, you're not going to want to miss the DIF Grand Finale, live from our studio, that's taking place at 5 p.m. UK time. And we'll be recapping the last 3 weeks of the DIF in a rather light-hearted manner, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, so we have 3 weeks of content at thinkdiff.co, but you can catch up if you've missed any of them, which I'm sure you may have done, because 200 sessions is quite a lot for you to get your teeth into. We have a catch-up period active for 4 weeks after the Disruptive Innovation Festival is finished. So you can catch up with any and all sessions until the end of the year. And this isn't the only contribution from Cranfield University this year at the DIF. They've had this is the 9th session in total. We've had videos and live discussions. On the 13th, we grilled the Circular Geeks. On the 15th, it was the turn of the Aspiring Geeks to get grilled. We discussed the role of sanitation in the context of the circular economy. And Cranfield have also released an impressive array of videos. Mariella featured in the session, The Transition to Circular Design, which featured on the Circular Economy playlist. Fiona Charnley contributed through a short animated video telling a story around distributed manufacturing. And Rafi Villa contributed with a video on anaerobic digestion. And Praful Sharma also provided an insight into the industrial Internet of Things. And those recordings of the live events and the videos are all available at thinkdiff.co on demand until the end of the year. And for more content around further afield outside the sphere of Cranfield University at the DIF, for more content around latest technologies and emerging markets and circular economy, check out their topic tags at thinkdiff.co. Sessions similar to each other are collated into topic tags, so you can watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it. So again, a big thank you to Marielle and Window for joining us at the DIF today. Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.